So after you had completed Tuesday's assignment, which was numbers 3, 5, and 7 on page 338, Wednesday's assignment was just a continuation. It was completing questions 9 and 11. Now, numbers 3, 5, and 7, if you look at those pictures, you were given the radius in those problems. The radius is the distance from the center to the outside. It's halfway across the circle. You were given that in 3 and 5 and 7. And the same thing happens for number 9. You're given the radius. Number 11 is the first one you're given where you're not given the radius. You can see the red line in number 11 goes the whole way across the circle. That's not the radius. That's called the diameter. When you're given the diameter, you want to take the value that's listed for it, which is 8, and divide that by 2. Half of 8 is 4. So whenever I do number 11, I'm going to be using 4 as the radius. I don't use 8. So it might be helpful to have your book out in front of you so that you can see 9 and 11, but I've went to my work now. In number 9, you can just see I take pi times 6 squared times 7, and I get my 2 answers. In number 11, I've got that little star there. I don't plug in 8 anywhere in number 11. I plug in 4. So it's pi times 4 squared times 16. That's because 4 is the radius, 8 is the diameter, and I don't want the diameter. So that's the first challenging part about these problems, I would say. Otherwise, we're just plugging numbers in and writing down what the calculator tells us. So along with the YouTube videos I posted, there are helpful examples in the book. For example, I'm back to page 336. This is example 2. It's an example of how to find the height of a cylinder. This would be something I would look over, as I posted on Google Classroom, before you tried number 13 in the book. You're trying to find the height of a cylinder, and you can see from the picture that the volume is 314, the diameter is 10, and we don't know the height. So my work here has me writing down V equals B times H. I'm going to plug in 314 for V. I know the volume is 314. I know that capital B becomes pi times r squared. So I write down pi, and then instead of 10, remember I'm not using the 10, I'm using 5 as the radius. Pi times 5 squared times h. If I take pi times 5 squared, I get 25 pi. And then it says that you're dividing each side by 25 pi. When you divide each side by 25 pi, as it says right here, 314 divided by 25 pi is going to be around 4. The height is 4 inches. You have to round that because it wants you to round to the nearest whole number. I would look at this one before you look at number 13 that was part of the homework. So now if I look at number 13 in the homework. Number 13 in the homework, I'm given the volume. I'm not given the radius. Check that out. I'm given the diameter. The diameter is the distance the whole way across our cylinder, which is 8. I'm not going to use 8. I'm going to use half of 8, which is 4. And then I have to find the height. So here's my work for number 13 from that assignment. Whoops, sorry about that. Number 13. I'm plugging in 250 equals pi times 4 squared. I'm not using 8. I'm using half of 8, which is 4 squared, and then times h. I'm changing then 4 squared to 16. So the pi times 4 squared becomes 16 pi. And I'm dividing by that on each side. I'm dividing by 16 pi on both sides. If I take 250 divided by 16 pi, it's about 4.97, and the directions in the book say to change it to the nearest whole number, which is 5. I can do this because 16 pi crosses out with pi and 4 squared. They cancel each other out, which is what I want. My final answer is h equals 5 feet. One thing to be aware of, we do need parentheses when we divide in the calculator. 250 divided by parentheses 16 pi. Those parentheses are important. They do matter. Finally, 15 was the challenge question in the book. You could have watched the YouTube video to give you an idea of how to do 15. You're given a pretty huge volume. You're given the height. Check that out. You're given the height, but you don't know the radius. So here's my work for number 15, the challenge question. I plug in 600,000 for the V. Then pi times r squared. I don't know r, and I know 76 is the height. I'm dividing now by 76 pi, right? I want to get r by itself. Let me just get rid of the pi and the 76. I want to divide by 76 pi, and you can see everything cancels out. 600,000 divided by 76 pi, that's about 2,513. And that's equal to r squared. We have to remember back from a month or so ago, maybe longer, that when you have r squared, you haven't finalized your answer. You need to find what r is. The way to get rid of that little 2 right there is to do a square root. We do the square root of 2,513, and it's when we round it to the nearest whole number, it's about 50 centimeters. That finishes Wednesday's assignment. Now, for Thursday's assignment, we move on to cones. Cones start on page 342 in the textbook. So you should read the beginning information about cones. Not much changes here. We're still dealing with a circle for the base, and it's a similar formula. The only difference is that there's a 1/3 in the front. There's a 1/3. So instead of us having pi times r squared, it's 1/3 times pi times r squared, and then the times h at the end for both of them. Here's an example that's going to help you with the first few that you have as far as homework goes for Thursday. It shows the example in the book, writing the formula for the volume, plugging numbers in, and then getting either 8 pi or 25.1. Now, this will come up a lot. The line is drawn the whole way across the circle, so that 4 is the diameter. We want the radius, so that's why we divide 4 by 2 to get 2, and we plug in 2. We don't have 4 anywhere plugged in this problem. We're using 2 instead of 4 because this is the diameter and we need the radius. So here's part of the homework assignment for Thursday. You can see number 5, finding volume, just like the example I showed that was in the book on page 342. The only difference again with cones is that we have the 1/3 in front. So if I take 1/3 times pi times r squared times h for number 5, I'm going to be putting in 3 squared. If you're looking at your book right now, this number 5 on page 344, you'll see in the book that the entire way across the circle is 6. We don't want the entire way across the circle. We want half of it. So we have to do 6 divided by 2 and get 3. 1/3 times pi times 3 squared times 3 would give us 9 pi or 28.3. Then you can see my work for number 7, 9, 11, and 13. And feel free to pause the video if you need more time to ask about or to look over any of those. In number 13, they're asking you to find the mistake. And the mistake, kind of like I mentioned before, is something that we kind of have to pay attention to. We don't want to use the diameter. We want to use the radius. So in that problem, they used 2 instead of 1. Here are those book problems that I had mentioned. If you look at number 5, number 9, and number 11, all of those have a line the whole way across a circle. So number 5, you're not going to use 6. We're going to use 3 like I mentioned. Number 9, you're not going to use 7. You need half of 7. Number 11, you're not going to use 5. You're going to use half of it, 2.5. That was the issue on number 13 as well. You can see the line is drawn the whole way across the circle. That means we're not using 2 like they do in the problem. You're using 1. So I'm going to go back to the homework answer key one more time. And hopefully now you guys can see why I did what I did on 5 through 13 odd. Finally, number 15 and 17 on page 345. Number 15 is about finding the height. Number 17 is about finding the diameter. 17 is definitely a challenge question. All right, here's the answer key to these two. For number 15, we're starting with the formula, and then in the book you saw it was 1/18 pi was the volume. You can see I put in 1/18 pi where V would typically go. Then 1/3 times pi. The radius is 1/3. what they give us in the picture is 2/3, but that's the diameter. We take half of that, which is 1/3, and we square it. I did some multiplication here, and I kept fractions. You might have used decimals, and that's fine. At the end of the problem, after you've taken away this 1/27th from both sides, what I did was I multiplied by 27 because I know 27 and 1/27th canceled out. 27 times 1/18 gives me 27/18, which is 1.5 feet. That's the value I find for the height. 17 is the challenge question, guys. For 17, I'm plugging in 3.6 for volume. I'm plugging in, then I have 1/3 pi r squared times 4.2. I multiplied a bunch of stuff together to get this 4.4. I multiplied 1/3 times pi times 4.2. I get 4.4. I divide both sides by 4.4. I get r squared equals 0.81. Remember, I'm not done yet. I've got to take the square root to get rid of that squared. The square root of 0.81 is 0.9. Now, I would be done if they had asked me for the radius. But check this out. They didn't ask me for the radius in the problem. They asked me to find the diameter. So I want to take the radius, which was 1.8. The radius was 0.9, multiply it times 2, and then I get the diameter is 1.8. The final answer is diameter is 1.8 for the challenge question. Folks, hopefully this video helps you understand a little bit more about the first week's assignments if you had any questions on them. Please review the video if you need to, pause it at certain spots, and try to get some help from either myself or a family member or a friend who might understand this topic a little bit more. Also, please take a look at the videos I post and the example problems I post because they can be helpful. A couple other things just before I let you go. Please make sure you're doing your work. You're allowed to get help. You're allowed to, look at your resources and ask others. You're allowed to ask me, obviously, but please try to do your work. That's going to help you be able to tell where you're doing well and what you still need help on, and that's going to help you know what you need to improve on for the future. You will see these topics again in 9th grade and years beyond, so we can't take this time right now just to pretend like it doesn't matter. You do need to do your best during this time and to put some practice in, and it will pay off if you do your work and if you are focused and you ask questions when you need to. Remember, us teachers are new to this online learning too, so we're trying to figure things out right now. We're trying to find the right amount of homework to post each day, the right amount of help to give. So we're trying to figure this out. If you have any feedback for me, please give it to me through email or through that exit ticket that I'm going to do each week, and that'll help us determine what's the right amount of work and the difficulty of work to give to you guys. Another thing I would say right now is let's focus on learning over the grade that we're going to get. If you guys attempt the problems that you're supposed to do, you give good efforts, you ask questions when you're struggling, your grade's going to be fine for this 9 weeks. Your learning is what matters. I want to avoid you guys doing something, like taking the shortcut and not doing an assignment completely. Please try to do the assignments completely. I'm trying not to do more than 4 or 5 questions per day. Please try to put some focused time into them, and that'll help you learn. That matters a lot right now. So don't worry about grades as much as learning and getting better with this new way of being educated, which is through online education. And to wrap up, guys, please let me know if there's any feedback that I could use that could be helpful for me. Please feel free to do extra practice if you want to. I'm assigning a certain amount of problems per day, but you're certainly allowed to do extra problems in the book if you wish. And please reach out to me when you have questions. That's what I'm here for, to help you guys learn these topics and become better math students. Finally, you're probably spending more time in your house with people, your parents, your guardians, your siblings, other family members, probably spending more time with them than normal because you're not at school for 8 hours a day. It's a challenging time for some people, okay? Try to be a good supportive family member. Help your younger siblings out with homework. Try to be supportive of your older siblings. Try to help out your parents with chores. Try to just be a pleasant person to be around. That would be my advice. It'll help make this time more manageable for everybody. All right, guys, reach out to me through email if you need any help. Feel free to go back in this video to any spots that you need to pause and kind of look at how I did a question. And we will have a 4-day week next week where we'll work on improving with these topics. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.